Welcome, everybody. Psyched to have you here. This is a pretty special event that we get to have this evening with HOKA. And if you've been with us, and as I can see on the participant list, many of you have been with us on previous HOKA calls. This is a slightly different version of that. In the past, we've often gone through many shoes, kind of covered more in that clinic style features, benefits of several shoes. But tonight we have with us somebody who knows a lot about some of the HOKA shoes. And Jared, I'd probably assume you know a lot about all the HOKA shoes, but in your particular niche, which is trail running, where we're going tonight, I assume you must know pretty much everything there is to know about these shoes. And so what that allows us to do at Experience More Tour here is having what we call an elevated conversation where we get to go quite a bit deeper, really can kind of dive in, get some of the subtleties, some of the nuance that maybe we're all curious about. I mean, HOKA as a brand has just been exploding. We're all trying to just keep up with it the best we can. And this will give us a second maybe to pause and get caught up and understand what's coming out there. We got the Speedgoat 6 that just launched in GORE-TEX. We're going to be focusing on that quite a bit tonight, but we're also going to be looking at trail running in general. So I've been talking about Jared, but I haven't fully introduced him yet. So let's do that. We have Jared Smith calling in. Like me, he's on the West Coast, so it's not a late evening call for him. It's a late afternoon post-work hours call, although sometimes I imagine, Jared, you do work a little late on occasion. And tonight, no exception. So thank you for doing that with us. Jared, do you mind saying hi to our community out there? Let them know a little bit about what you do and where you're based.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Jared Smith. I'm a product line manager for performance footwear based out in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. And yeah, the team out here has been in place for about a year, previously in Santa Barbara, California. But yeah, I've been a part of the brand for 8 years and focusing really on the trail run product for the last 5 or 6 or so. So seeing a lot of growth and evolution through the line, and yeah, stoked to chat through it.
Yeah, and so you're, being there for as long as you have now been there, right? You've seen a lot of evolution, and we'll kind of get into some of the big changes. One of them being using GORE-TEX. But as you've chaperoned some of these lines through their evolutions to where they are now, it kind of has grown into what we know now to be the HOKA trail running line. Before we go really too far into this, can we get a tour of the HOKA trail running line through your perspective? I would love to hear that, and so we can kind of understand all these different products and how they fit in, at least from your perspective.
Yeah, totally. So I would position the Speedgoat is really the heart of HOKA. It represents a lot of HOKA expression and experience on the trail. So it has the 3 ingredients that we really focus on for all of our shoes, but tuned differently for each experience, but really comes to life best for that first initial HOKA trail run experience. Those 3 ingredients being our cushioning, our active foot frame, and our meta rocker. So that cushioning is something that a lot of you easily see visibly, the amount of cushion in your foot. That active foot frame is really the element that I like to use the analogy of a kayak or a surfboard, where it's really a kayak that you're sitting inside of that cushioning, providing a little bit of stability and just wrapping around the foot. And then the meta rocker that you see on all the shoes here with that toe spring and the rocker in the heel portion of the shoe, just allowing to really move through the gait cycle really smoothly. And the Speedgoat really is that like core central part. And then you can move up to the one on the far top right that you see is the Tecton X, Tecton X3 that we just launched in August. Kind of that tip of the spear, really built for speed and ultra long distance and technical trails. And then if you move down to the far left at the bottom, that's the Torrent. So a little bit of a lower stack height, some aggressive lugs, but is a little bit more approachable potentially for those that are either new to the HOKA brand and not wanting just to go full send into the Speedgoat, or you're looking for something that's super lightweight and nimble for those shorter runs out on the trail. And then everything that surrounds it, you see the Speedgoat 6 GORE-TEX, Speedgoat 6 GORE-TEX Mid, and then the Challengers in the top left over there is a great transitional option for those that are really familiar with the cushioning and the underfoot ride of a Clifton, transitioning into trail, tossing some lugs in, really helps familiarize somebody that's comfortable in the Clifton to get into a Challenger. And then we've got over on the right-hand side, the Mafate that's really built for that go long in super technical terrain. Right there in the middle, and then on the bottom right is the Stinson 7. So providing a little bit more stability using our H frame, but with that max cushioning that you find in like a Bondi or a Gaviota over on the roadside. So holistically, this is a great snapshot, but the Speedgoat perfectly positioned in the middle as the heart of the Hoka Trail lineup.
Yeah, so you've got the Speedgoat, which is going to kind of take you anywhere, and it really could go in any of these places that these shoes could go for sure. So if you kind of need one shoe to do it all, the Speedgoat is going to be your answer. And
Yep.
then you can start to quiver out a bit as you know get specialties, or as you want to try, to vary your run or vary your trails that you're out on. But all of those shoes kind of holding down tight with the Hoka DNA of the active foot frame and the the cushion and that rocker. One
Yep.
of the things I noticed, and I'm curious how you think about this, like looking at the rockers in some of these shoes as a whole. How do you adapt the rocker? Where are the variables that you can play with in playing with that meta rocker? Like
Yeah.
we measure stack height, we measure drop. Those are numbers that we can throw out there. Do you have like a circumference of the rocker that you use, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely different tolerances that you work with, especially when there's a last included. So there is tolerance within a last to integrate a more pronounced rocker or a less pronounced rocker. And so there is limitations to that. So depending on the style and the overall experience that we're looking to get after is like, do we tune it to 11 or do we keep it right at a 6 or a 7?
Mm-hmm.
And so that allows us to keep it a little bit of variety or variability, but the last is really kind of those borderlines that says, okay, this is what we can do to maintain the certain type of cushioning that we're looking for,
See.
and then adjust the smooth or super progressive ride that you're looking for underfoot with that rocker.
No, fascinating. It must be fun to kind of toy with that a little bit as you go through some protos and see how that results. And is that a plus? Is it too much? Yeah, and it'd be interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it dates back to I think we might have an image of the first Mafate where we just had a big chunk of foam and we really started messing with that through a belt sander. And it was really introducing aggressive rocker shape, tuning, cutting from the sidewall to ensure that the foam was adaptable and could compress over certain types of terrain or at certain places within the shoe to provide that super cushion landing, but also something that moved you through the gait cycle. Specifically, the focus was initially around going downhill, and we found that it actually works pretty well on flat ground and actually pretty good going uphill as well. So it just continued to evolve. And yeah, from a block of foam and a sander, we still tinker in that same way today.
No, it's fascinating. And so yeah, you show us this original Mufate, right? And the tinkering that went into kind of developing this version and developed for a trail, but it wasn't it's great for certain trails, but it wasn't the end all be all. So what brought the Speedgoat to be, right? It's different than the Mufate, and it has become the heart really of the trail running program. What needed to be changed? What needed to be detuned or turned up in order to kind of move into the Speedgoat line? And where did the idea come from to make that transition?
Yeah, so there was the essentially the Mafate was the core style in the line, and then there was the Stinson. The Stinson Evo was another trail offering at the time, and these were all based in Europe. And some conversations early on in the brand's history started to be had with a trail athlete, the Speedgoat himself, Carl Meltzler, and he had those two styles, and then there was a new style that was being introduced that really is a lot of the origin story called the Rapa Nui. And that's what you're seeing on screen right now. And the DNA and a lot of the lineage of the Speedgoat is rooted in this Rapa Nui style that had a slightly lower stack height, a little bit more aggressive lugs, a slightly more deconstructed upper. And so this was acting as like kind of that initial DNA. And then through some feedback with Carl and some design work, the first Speedgoat was launched, and that's what you're seeing on screen now. And it really has this great balance of balance cushioning, aggressive traction. The Vibram Mega Grip outsole was a part of the first version. It's still a part of the 6 that we see here today. And yeah, it was kind of this perfect go long, go technical trainer and racer that kind of made its way into the line and has continued to proliferate.
And so you launched this initial Speedgoat and working with your athlete to kind of bring this to be. And so then you got involved in the 2. So that was right after this and
Yep.
started to, or right after the 2, and then started to kind of evolve it from there. So how do you take something like this and I'll put it in air quotes, right? Improve it for whatever that means. Like what do you start to look at and tinker with as you go from iteration to iteration to bring it forward?
Yeah, there's a ton of feedback that we really lean into. It's both from the athletes as well as our consumers to ensure that we're delivering something that fits, feels, and rides the way that they want it to, and for the various types of terrain and distances that they're going to be interfacing. And so a lot of the feedback that we got from the 1 really helped evolve or revolve the Speedgoat in the 2. That was a big update. And there's been a couple of those through the overall lineage of the style. And so the big updates improved the fit in the 2, brought the midsole into a little bit of softer expression. The upper materials were a lot softer and just more accommodating to the foot. And then I think the next inflection point that you'll see that we had in the brand was when there was a version called the Evo Speedgoat that came out in 2019. And there were several elements to this that really helped us push the Speedgoat forward. From a design and technology standpoint, and then just overall consideration of materials. So the dynamic vamp that you see in the vamp down there and up here as well was a soft piece that really allowed the foot to splay. But this dynamic vamp is an element that provides 4-way stretch. And so as the foot continues to I don't know. I guess it swells. It does for me.
Yeah, well, it'll
As the
splay as the day goes on, and right, things will happen.
Yeah, and so it just allows for a little bit more accommodation in the forefoot. And then as you're rolling through and finishing that gait cycle during the toe off phase, just provides a little bit of a softer expression of how those materials interface with the top of the toes, which is really sensitive. And so that was a huge learning that has been a part of every Speedgoat from the 5 onwards. And it's those details that continue to integrate with each version. So we've made some macro changes. From the 1 to the 2 is a pretty big change. From the 4 to the 5 is a pretty big change. And then in between, you find these micro opportunities. And each time in between, you're looking at technology, you're looking at construction practices, you're looking at different materialization to see how you can increase performance or increase the comfort and fit, feel, and ride is really what we focus on based on consumer feedback to make it that much better.
Yeah, and looking at those dynamics and then and wrapping in, I think now, especially at Gore, we're really focused on this. And I know you're driving some of this, wrapping in responsibility and sustainability as we step forward as well, and paying attention to those versions and iterations.
Yep.
And what can be changed. I was gonna say removed, but that's the wrong word, right? I guess CO2 removed, but that's not quite the way to think about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughtful approach that goes into that integration of sustainable materials, recycled content, and that doesn't change for any of the styles that we work on. And I know specifically for the Speedgoat 6, we really leaned on to every element of the upper and figured out where can we find increased recycled content, but still really relying on the performance that we expect and the consumer expects as well. So as much as possible, the recycled content is at its highest place, and the number of items or elements within the style that we can include that recycled content. And it's over half of the materials in the upper include a high percentage of recycled content. It's something that each season, each version, we're pushing where that can go while still delivering that high performance.
Yeah, it's always you don't want to make the leap too fast. You don't want to, I'm not going to say sacrifice performance, but change the performance to be at a place that isn't what you intended, right? And you have to be careful, and also looking at supply chains, right? You make a lot of Speedgoats, and you have to make sure that you can have solid supply chains if you are sourcing some of these materials. And that's the thing at Gore that I know we work very hard with. Like, we'll talk in just a second here about the invisible fit integration, but we've finally been able to commit to using 100%, not 100%, sorry, 70% recycled nylon on the liner, the interior part of the shoe, and that's kind of adds into some of those recycled components. Let's talk Gore for a minute, because I got a GORE-TEX t-shirt on, so why not? The Speedgoat 6 gets a new GORE-TEX technology into it, new for it,
Yes.
for the Speedgoat line. And this is invisible fit. Why integrate visible fit in now? What made this version the version right for visible fit?
This was the first opportunity that we had to integrate the invisible fit technology with the Speedgoat franchise. The first product that we actually had on the trail run line was the Challenger 7 GORE-TEX back in spring of last year. And so as the Speedgoat was updating the fall or late spring of this year, it was a no-brainer. It is the best in class from a fit and performance standpoint. And we have the Speedgoat mid that is in the booty construction, as you see with the Anacapa here. And there is two different constructions. And so the lamination of the invisible fit that, Marshall, I'm sure you want to tech out maybe a little bit, and
I might tech
I
out
can
a
echo
little
on
bit
it.
on it. I know a lot of the, for sure. I mean, why don't we go there? So
Sure.
the way invisible fit works in opposition to maybe what you see on the bottom right, which is booty technology, is rather than having this booty, which is then seam sealed and lasted to fit the interior of the shoe and strategically glued in, right? Rather than doing that, what we do is we directly bond our membrane into the face fabric or the upper knits of the shoe while the shoe is still flat in that construction phase. That the membrane gets bonded to that, and then we laminate and bond a backer or a next to sock layer into that to protect the membrane and also create a little bit of a smooth sliding layer on the inside. What this does is, to the end consumer, it feels like a single layer. And the intention here, as the name implies, is that you can't feel a fit difference between a shoe that has invisible fit and a shoe that does not have GORE-TEX in it. So what we call the inline style. It's with really the hope here is that customers will maybe have a Speedgoat that they'll use in various conditions that they deem appropriate for that, and then also have a Speedgoat Gore version, so that you go out on a day like this weekend, there is a 50% chance of rain. I intend to go out for a long day. I'm gonna want to make sure I have GORE-TEX protection on my feet, as I know I'm going to experience wet ground conditions. It may not rain where I am, but the trail will be wet, and so I want to have that protection on there. So be able to swap out into that is pretty key. It's a really elegant way of adding GORE-TEX into shoes, and I think it is the future of footwear, for sure, in my opinion. And we're starting to see it in mids. It's very slowly trickling into mids, but this application now in the Speedgoat, to me, just like really brings this GORE-TEX version of the shoe up into the absolute gold standard. I mean, there really is nothing better. One of the things that adding visible fit in allows you to do is to kind of add a drop liner in, right, and create that custom heel pocket. How did how do you consider that? What are you doing in the heel pocket there to make a perfect fit, and what kind of versions and iterations do you have to go through to create that heel pocket?
Yeah, it's really just kind of working with the fit and wear testing team to pick the right materials. A lot of consideration goes into material selection to ensure that we're meeting the GORE-TEX standard, where it's not a high wicking, using the right DWR, but also provides the right overall comfort and cushioning. So as all of those ingredients come in throughout the entire development process, it's tested, revised, and tested again to ensure that we're getting that right comfortable fit that aligns as close as you would with a non-GORE-TEX option. So there's a lot of parity as you introduce the invisible fit to the non-GORE-TEX option. And probably one of the most exciting ones that I know that a lot of retailers have been excited about, I share the excitement, is the addition of a width for the Speedgoat 6 GORE-TEX. There's been a lot of excitement and anticipation for that opportunity. And as soon as it was able to hit the line, I know our team and then our retailer partners were just as gassed up as we were. So yeah.
It is probably the number one question we get when we talk about shoes on the Experience More tour is winners are going to be a wide in the Gore version, right? And it's always feels so good to be able to say now,
Yep,
right? And
exactly.
to give that fitting option, for the folks on the retail floor, just to have that choice just makes your job so much better because you can just feel so much more confident that you can just send somebody out there with the right fit.
Yep.
It's pretty spectacular, and yeah, how come now? Again, I'm always curious. Like now is the moment. Like what data did you receive? What allowed the Speedgoat to cross that threshold for you to be able to go back to your either the finance team or somebody and say, look, it's time to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, we saw just a large adoption of the regular width version, and then the wide width version, in the non-Gore-Tex. And so as we really looked at this update, integrating invisible fit, it just expanded that aperture for clients and consumers to get into
Yeah,
a fit that is a little bit more comfortable for them based on their foot shape. There is kind of a limited option list of Gore-Tex wide options. So seeing that the Speedgoat is really the heart of our line, it made the most sense for us to integrate it and add that option. And so far, the adoption has been like really good. So
yeah.
we'll stay with that.
No, it's such an opportunity. I can't think of, and I can't say for sure, but I can't think of any other invisible fit styles that are coming out in wides and running trail running right now. And to be able to offer that is going to be, it's a huge opportunity that you're filling. And I know our community echoes that for sure. I'm sure there's some smiles on people's faces right now.
Totally.
Um, Getting into visible fit a little bit, just because I had the microscope out today. I took some pictures. I'd love to share these with you. It's always fun to look at some of these technologies through a microscope. And I do see a question as well as about when was Invisible Fit introduced. Ben did answer that fall 2017. We launched it early on, but we are at version essentially we call it 3.5 right now in Invisible Fit, and that is with the addition of EPE, addition of some additional like secret layers in there to help hold the whole thing together and really allowing for sort of new construction techniques. One of the cool things about EPE is that it actually is a stronger material, which means that you can not only is it stronger just from a flex standpoint, but it's stronger from a compression standpoint. And so in some of the lasting machines, you can really push on it now. Whereas the old EPTFE, there was a limit to how hard you could push on it because the pores would start to combine. And the new EPE it doesn't happen. And so it allows for some cool new opportunities in shoe construction. Um, you know, uh, and it'll be really fun to see how that plays out moving forward in the years. But here's that photo I took of the inside. So this is the next to sock layer. And so you can see here the black knit. This is called a tricot knit, the style of knit. That gives a smooth sliding layer so that your sock and your is lifted off the membrane a little bit. And then if you look through it, you can see what looks like kind of little hairs. And that's that secret layer protecting the membrane in there. It's a non-woven layer that goes into the inside, that allows for the lamination process to happen with the membrane and kind of hold the whole product together. What's cool is that the new EPEs are almost transparent. And so you can actually see through it into the other side of the shoe. And what you're seeing are some of the features on the outside in the knit on the exterior of the shoe through the membrane. It's really cool to see like all that goes into it. And then
Yeah.
here's the outside. And I just, because I had the microscope out, I'm like, I'll take a picture of the outside. I'm like, whoa, what is that knit?
Yeah.
So how do you play with knits on the outside? What are you looking at? I mean, this isn't, you don't happen upon these. You're working with suppliers to make sure you get the perfect knit. What are you looking for in the exterior knits of some of these shoes?
Yeah, so when we were looking at opportunities in this update for the Speedgoat 6, we took a lot of the feedback and learnings from the Speedgoat 5, and that leveraged a lot of the decision making in this update. And so with that feedback, you're trying to find kind of that unicorn, that Goldilocks of the right material that provides something that's strong, it's durable, it's lightweight, it's breathable, and we found those opportunities were definitely easy to get after in the 6. And so using this woven material that we did in this version, in the Speedgoat 6, it's stronger, really provides that nice lockdown in the midfoot to ensure that you're on top of the midsole and really feel like you're captured in the shoe as you want to be for that technical terrain. And then it's also really durable. So we want to make sure that when you're out in these environments, you're interfacing some rocks and debris and whatnot. It's not going to just gonna blow up on you and have a toe hanging out the side while you're running. And then that breathability is super important, and that goes for the non-Gore-Tex and the Gore-Tex option as well, just to ensure that we're providing something that has a ton of performance, regardless of the season or regardless of the conditions.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you can evolve, and I'm grabbing a sample here that I have, here it is, of the Speedgoat 4, right? And to get some of that strength, you used to kind of add a lot of these TPU layers on the exterior so that when you laced it down, it would lock the shoe over your foot. It seems like some of these knits have evolved, where you've been able to source new materials that allow you to remove some of that, right? Which is going to open up the breathability. It's going to remove weight as well. You know, these new knits seem pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's being able to engineer the right type of strength where you need it, and then leave some of those openings for that additional breathability where the foot needs to breathe. And so, yeah, you're kind of designing in a deconstructive way. So removing layers, but being very thoughtful of where those layers are or where the strength is, so that you have the right lockdown that you need when you're out on the technical trail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool to see it and coming. It's just a modern shoe, right? In that way, and these are the trends that we're seeing. It must be fun to be at the forefront of that.
Totally.
Removing now some of the layers that we all expected to have on there. So we played with Invisible Fit. We've looked at wides, talked a little bit about some of the materials. With this new Speedgoat 6 coming out, right? We've got you. Can you give us a tour through some of the other key features that maybe folks on the sales floor can either point out to customers as needed, or just feel secure about selling these shoes?
Yeah, totally. So I spoke about the dynamic vamp earlier. It's an element of the shoe, part of the construction that is patent pending, and it does the performance elements of it is to allow the toes to splay as the miles are long, and the foot begins to swell, and also offers a little bit of an easier transition at the end of the gait cycle when you're at that toe off phase. So allowing those materials to not necessarily bunch up, but just kind of like flex a little more smoothly at the top of the foot. I love that part. It was a fun thing to patent, and it was a learning from that Evo Speedgoat that still lives in each version since. When we're looking at the outsole, Ryan Crouch is the designer on the Speedgoat 6, and he did a really cool and really thoughtful way of biomimicry. So this is the goat, and so he looked at a goat's hoof, and how is that oriented to interface with that terrain? And so goats' hoofs have a little bit of a harder exterior and then a little bit of a softer interior element, so that they have that gripping ability as they're moving on uneven terrain. And so if you look on the shoe, there's a slight depression just after the met heads towards the midfoot that mimics that element of the goat's hoof. So increasing traction, allowing the foot to, or the midsole in the shoe to deform over uneven and varied terrain. It really provides kind of this cool storytelling for that biomimicry of design intent and the thoughtfulness of how it came together. Another side that was new for this style is goats don't have teeth, but this one does. So we added a nice little wrap up of some outsole rubber here, just on the lateral forefoot, just to increase the traction and where the foot and the shoe can interface with the trail to really bite in to that terrain and ensure that you're getting that confident, inspired traction that the Speedgoat is really there to provide. So that's a quick little tour of some nice little nuggets of the Speedgoat, and yeah, it's been really fun to bring it to life.
What about the foam and the way the active foot frame sitting into that foam? How is this either in the Speedgoat franchise in general? How is that considered? How far into there are you? And what types of foams are you looking for and sourcing so that to deliver in these products?
Yeah, it's really important to take a canvas of the overall line and where you want a softer foam, a slightly firmer foam. If it's a stacked foam using two different compounds, You'll see that in the Mafate Speed. But for the Speedgoat, we want that nice balance, that bit of harmony where there is cushioning, there's a little bit of responsiveness. And so being really thoughtful of how that either changes from one version to the next or it maintains.
Mhm.
In the Speedgoat 6, we found an opportunity to get after a foam that still provided that great soft cushioning that but was a little bit more responsive. And so that was the decision that was vetted through a lot of testing, through some athletes, and then our entire wear testing team, and delivered a ride that was still recognizable, but like slightly nuanced for a bit of excitement when you get into the new Speedgoat. So yeah, it's a really thoughtful approach, but also taking a step back and looking at how it sets into the overall line from an experiential standpoint.
And so help me understand a little bit about when you say like a responsive foam. What do you mean by that? How might I experience that as a runner?
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit of that energy return from the ground up. So as you're impacting the ground, are you feeling that little bit of compression back up
Mhm.
and providing that energy back into you, giving it
Okay.
a little bit of a lively feel or yeah, that more tactical feel of the terrain.
And it must exist on a spectrum, right? There's some shoes you want to have a lot of that spring back, right? You're trying to return all of the energy to the runner, and there's probably some where you're trying to absorb all of that, right? So that to make it would be slower, but it would make us feel more comfortable over the long haul.
Yeah, there's a bit of balance in finding that right harmony because then you're also thinking and considering a huge element of stability. Because if it's too soft, you have to balance. Okay, where is it potentially moving a little too much on the train than intended or than you'd really like to feel really on the ground and confident about each footfall. So yeah, it's definitely a spectrum. And for certain types of terrain, you're gonna consider something that's a little more firm to make sure that you really feel stable and locked onto that terrain.
And then just getting into some of the tech specs, right? Is this going to be the same as the five as far as the stack height overall?
Yeah, so stack heights and everything maintain the same here on the six. The really cool thing that we were able to do is scrutinize a lot of the details of the build overall, and the shoe lost nearly an ounce in weight from the
Wow.
five to the six, which was an amazing surprise. We were really meticulous about it, but as the versions, the progression of our development continued, we just found these additional opportunities to save weight, but still deliver something that was high performing. And all of our wear testers and consumers would be really excited to get into. And so, yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of a massive team that made that happen. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about it, but it was the work of many.
That's a dangerous precedence to set, losing an ounce.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that's pretty exciting, and that's an ounce, not a gram, right? So that's a lot
Yeah.
going into that. So wow, that's
And
a
that's
big change
and
as
that's where
well.
each component is considered. And so you're
Yeah.
looking at grams and pennies make a dollar, grams make an ounce. And so as you scrutinize each one from a sustainability standpoint to an overall weight standpoint, that's where you can get into these really kind of fun weight savings situations.
Um, we have a question here from Craig. He says, I feel like the Hubble bubble has been reduced compared to the version 5. Do you guys did you put it on a diet? And yeah,
The Spiga went on a overall weight diet
yeah.
holistically. The ride slightly changed, is a little bit more responsive than the five, and yeah, it's been received really well. And so yeah, still delivering that nice harmony or that balance of cushioning and responsiveness.
And then just because it would not be responsible of me to not bring it up, right? This has a really different look than anything I've seen from a trail running shoe as far as the aesthetic goes, and that would be that the speckledness, right? And it's a
We call
subtle
it the
thing, but
patina.
yeah, it continues into even the overlays here in the toe bumper, right? Like really thought out. I actually don't even know how you did that. Technically, that must be kind of hard. Um,
Yeah.
so what's that? Help us with that, right? Because there's this idea that we got to build in, in Gore-Tex, we're thinking about thermal comfort. But
Yep.
then there's also like this biodynamic comfort, which you're thinking out a lot with shoes. But there's also this idea of aesthetic comfort, right? We have to like the shoe.
Yeah.
It makes us smile when we put it on, when we think it looks good. So you got to play with that. So yeah, what was the idea here with the patina this season? Where did that come from?
It was really just this fun idea of like, this shoe is made to get dirty. It is built for the trail. Let's give it a little personality before it gets there and like start that process for the end consumer. And it allows us to integrate different functional pieces as well as like the form piece. So you have the visual that's immediate and it's really striking on some color versions or colorways. And then it can be toned down for other colorways where it's really subtle and neutral and flooded. But from a functional standpoint, the patina, it starts here in the upper and it acts kind of as a toe rand for stability and support standpoint as you're moving laterally out on the trail. And then if you're interfacing some light stones or sticks and things like that, a little bit of protection for the forefoot and the toes in that area. And yeah, as I was mentioned earlier, you can really dial it up to 11 or you can tune it all the way down. But it just gives that spectrum of opportunity to celebrate or to really whisper how it comes to life.
Now it's pre-patinaed, right? So it won't show
Yeah.
dirt as well. But I want to caution everybody: you still need to wash your shoes.
Yes.
Very important from a performance perspective and a longevity perspective. So this will help you to make it look like it's not dirty when it's dirty. But I do want you to push that onto your customers. It's important to clean them inside and out. It will assist in breathability, right? Dirt
Yep.
is mass hiding in the shoe. That mass resists evaporative transport, which means that there's harder to get breathability through all those dirt particles. Additionally, dirt particles are what I like to call micro knives, right? These little teeny
Totally.
knives in there, just tearing everything apart with every step. And if you're doing 50,000 steps in a day, that's a lot of tearing.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
do.
such a dork about cleaning my
I
shoes.
bet
It's
you
like
are.
every other run, every second run, something like that, the brush comes out. It takes 2 minutes after the run, it's done. And then when you put your shoe on, it's like it's almost like a fresh pair. You're
It
just
does look
ready to
new.
roll.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty cool, and it's not just an aesthetic thing. There is a performance reason to do that.
100%. I
Um,
like that thousand little knives analogy. It makes so much sense. It's like little sandpaper once it gets in there.
Absolutely, right. And think of the glues that are used and all those precious little fibers and they're knit together. Those things can be affected.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we have a question here from Joanne around the H frame. Now it's not
Sure.
in this shoe, but certainly you know about that.
Yep.
Uh, Explain the
The
H frame for us.
the H-frame is a stability feature that is found in the Stinson 7. It's also featured in the Gaviota as well. It's a two-part midsole, and the top part of the midsole is essentially shaped as an H. It kind of looks like an H, and it really helps from an overall I see another question. Is it the next gen of the H-frame? It is an extension of our stability positioning opportunities as a part of how the midsole is constructed. So the H-frame sits directly underneath the foot with a chassis system that interfaces with the ground. And that H-frame really provides like 360 support that extends from the overall inherent stability that that chassis or a lot of the other platforms like the Speedgoat or the Challenger have just automatically built in from the way that it is a little bit wider throughout the entire length of the shoe and how that wider footprint just sets onto the ground as a more inherently stable platform. But the H-frame tunes that up a little bit just with a slightly different durometer of the foam to provide that a little bit extra support as it interfaces with the foot as a part of the active foot frame. So it's just a little more stable than you would find in some of the other trail options.
So giving us a little more feeling of being solid on a trail. Is that what stability means? Because I come
Yep.
from and maybe this is the evolution, but from the olden days of like stability, meaning actually I needed a stability shoe because I overpronate or supinate or whatever, and need something to help me with that. Is that kind of falling through that same narrative thread, but maybe a modern version of that?
Yep. Very similar. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question. And thank you for the insightful answer.
Yeah. Pleasure.
We do have a question here from Ryan around specific recommendations on how you should care for Gore-Tex uppers versus standard uppers. There really isn't a big difference. For me, when I wash my shoes on the inside and the outside, the only thing, the harder part is that to rinse them, you just have to pour water in the inside and pour it out, and pour water in the inside and pour it out, right? You can't just flush it through the shoe. What I usually do is I usually use dish soap just because it cuts grease and grime
Same.
really quickly. scrub it with a bottle brush on the interior of the shoe, and then I just use the same brush on the outside. Give it a good rinse till there's no bubbles coming out, and then I actually stuff it with newspaper, which does help it to dry a little bit faster. Do not put it by any heat sources. That's not good for the shoe. But you just set it out. If it's stuffed with newspaper, it'll be dry in the morning. So, but no special instructions. You know, the DWRs on shoes are there to prevent wicking, to prevent water from moving from the ground up in to, well, this giant hole in the top of a shoe. And so that's what the DWRs do. So you can retreat with the DWR to aid with the wicking, but don't think you're putting on there to make the water beat up and roll off, because they're going to be exposed to contaminants almost instantly as soon as you get out on the trail. So you can retreat, although the DWRs, Jared, that I assume your factory applies are pretty robust.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're really hardy.
Yeah, and those anti-wicking treatments, again, it's in there for the anti-wicking, not for the beating of water like it would be on a garment. It's a little different purpose. As we wrap up, I'm curious, what's the buzz at HOKA these days? What's the excitement about right now in your office or where you are?
Yeah. So there's a lot of buzz. I would say it's electric. I was fortunate enough to attend an event over in France called UTMB 2 weeks ago, and we had a friend and colleague of ours that did something kind of cool. He was able to cross the tape at the front of that race before anybody else, and so yeah, dear friend of mine, Vincent Bouillard, was able to win UTMB 2 weeks ago, and the collective office couldn't be more excited for his achievement and all the hard work that went into his victory. Fun note is the shoes that he helps work on, the Tecton X3, or are shoes that he works on from a foam development standpoint. So he does a lot of the engineering to integrate these technical foams and compounds that allow people to do things like run around a mountain and win. So yeah,
Right. That's like I bet that gave him something to think about as he was running. It's like, all right, is it foam? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing right now? And it must have been pretty cool, right? I don't know. I know I have my
totally.
wonders on long races, is for sure.
Yeah, you could see his excitement all day. And actually, towards the tail end, we were able to see him at a couple different checkpoints, and a bit of that disbelief that, like, oh, this is really happening. This is awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm at the front of the race.
The UTMB, right? Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
You supplied us this little video, Ben. You mind clicking go on this video? It's pretty fun. This is at the finish.
Yeah, this is right at the finish. It was so great. Share a quick embrace, celebrate his victory, and yeah, the city was absolutely electric, and shared his excitement to see something that really has never been done at the race before, to have a non-professional win. So
right, a normal person. I mean, he's not
yeah,
normal. Of course, he's not normal, but like a non-professional athlete, right? He's got a job.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
is
And
remarkable.
he does a great job at it too. So
That's fantastic. Well, cool. Like, what a cool place to be. What and you know, you can kind of share out some of that excitement with us in some of these products as they're rolling out. And I mean, there's just such a cool brand right now, and the whole
yeah,
industry is looking to HOKA to kind of see what's next. And thanks for sharing with us a little bit about what's coming.
for sure. Yeah, really inspiring out there, and definitely fuels the fire for what we can do looking ahead.
No, well, thank you, Jared, and thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. It's been really fun to be able to chat, involve your questions, your curiosities, as we've kind of explored the Speedgoat 6 and the trail running line in general. Jared, I'd love to have you back in future years as some of your
Totally.
products come out. It'd be fun to chat with you some more, but thank you very much for joining tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions.